Charlie Sheen wasn't just a Hollywood star. He was a cultural explosion. Once the highest-paid actor on television, known for hits like Platoon, Wall Street, and 2.5 Men, Charlie's face was everywhere. But somewhere along the way, the fame stopped being about the work and started being about the chaos. Viral meltdowns, wild interviews, tiger blood, goddesses, rehab, firings, lawsuits, and underneath it all, a man spiraling deeper into addiction, mental health struggles, and public collapse. Yet somehow, he's still standing. So how did Charlie Sheen go from one of the most bankable names in Hollywood to the poster child of celebrity self-destruction? And what does his story say about fame, family, and second chances? Today, we unpack the wild rise, brutal fall, and unexpected survival of Charlie Sheen, a man who out-crazied Hollywood and lived to tell the tale. Before he was winning, before tiger blood and meme immortality, Charlie Sheen was just a kid born into chaos. Carlos Erwin Estevez entered the world on September 3, 1965, not crying, but silent, lifeless. The umbilical cord had wrapped around his neck during birth, cutting off oxygen. Doctors managed to resuscitate him, but it was a grim introduction to the world, one that set a haunting tone for what was to come. As Charlie would later put it, "I was born dead." His father, Ramon Antonio Gerardo Estevez, better known by his stage name Martin Sheen, was still an actor on the fringe of fame. A struggling performer at the time, Martin had changed his name to sound less ethnic, believing it would help him land roles in a prejudiced industry. "I never legally changed my name," he said years later, but back then, people weren't hiring Estevezes. Martin would go on to become one of Hollywood's most respected names. But early on, he was just another actor hustling for bit parts while trying to support a growing family in New York City. Charlie was the youngest of 4 children, a household filled with energy, art, and, behind closed doors, dysfunction. Martin Sheen was charismatic on camera, but he carried demons off screen. Alcoholism gripped him through much of his early career. His son, Emilio, who kept the Estevez name, later said, "I hated him when he drank. He got violent. Some of it he remembered. Some of it he doesn't, but it was horrible." Martin's outbursts often landed on Emilio, the oldest, while young Charlie watched from the sideline. These moments weren't rare. On the set of Apocalypse Now, Martin suffered a near-fatal heart attack and filmed scenes while heavily intoxicated. In one take, he punched a mirror mid-scene, slicing his hand open and smearing his face with blood. The cameras kept rolling. In a way, that moment was symbolic. Martin Sheen was literally bleeding for his art, lost in a haze of booze, self-loathing, and creative obsession. Despite the turbulence, Martin eventually found his way out. He sobered up, made peace with his demons, and used his platform to speak out about mental health and addiction. His survival story became an inspiration. Charlie, though, took a different route. While Martin's upbringing involved poverty and resilience, including losing his mother at age 11 and nearly being placed in an orphanage, Charlie grew up in the spotlight. Surrounded by actors, producers, and Hollywood excess, Charlie's world was shiny on the outside, but unstructured on the inside. He had access to everything and limits on nothing. At just 8 years old, he made a blink and you miss it cameo in his father's film Badlands, sitting beneath a street lamp with his brother Emilio. It would be his first time on screen, and a sign of things to come. Acting was in his blood, and the path ahead seemed paved. But the road to stardom was anything but smooth, and the Sheen name would soon carry more than just expectations. It would become a double-edged sword, one that brought both opportunity and destruction. Growing up in a house full of actors may sound glamorous. For Charlie Sheen, it was anything but. By the time he was 10, he was being passed around on sets, surrounded by adults playing pretend, smoking behind trailers, talking business and fame. Charlie wasn't just raised in Hollywood, he was raised by Hollywood, and it showed early. He smoked his first joint at age 11. By 15, he had lost his virginity to a red-haired escort named Candy. Not exactly the kind of coming-of-age moment most teenagers have. Charlie paid for it using his dad's credit card, a charge Martin eventually discovered and confronted his son about. But Charlie wasn't ashamed. If anything, he wore it like a badge of honor. In high school, Charlie attended Santa Monica High, rubbing shoulders with future icons like Rob Lowe and Robert Downey Jr. But while others were focused on auditions and after-school sports, Charlie was chasing a different thrill. He was arrested at 16 after being caught with marijuana and a knife in his car. The police found him passed out inside. His mom's personal friendship with the judge saved him from any major legal trouble. A year later, he upped the ante, getting arrested again, this time for credit card fraud. He and his friends had dug through trash at the Beverly Hills Hotel, collecting information and using it to buy TVs and jewelry. The consequences? Practically nothing. His grades slipped, truancy piled up, and eventually he was expelled. That meant his scholarship to play baseball at the University of Kentucky was gone. According to Charlie, he turned it down to pursue acting. The truth? He didn't have a choice, but acting, ironically, seemed to reward the chaos. Despite all the warning signs, Charlie's career was just beginning. His first big break came in Red Dawn, 1984, the first ever PG-13 movie, where he starred alongside Patrick Swayze. That same year, he became a father at 19 with his high school girlfriend, Paula Prophet. Most teens were figuring out prom. Charlie was figuring out fatherhood, while balancing the pressures of early fame. A year later, he starred in The Boys Next Door and Lucas, the latter of which would later become infamous for allegations that wouldn't surface until decades later. Around this time, he also appeared in Ferris Bueller's Day Off, playing a drugged-out misfit. Ironically, that role was more foreshadowing than fiction. Despite his escalating behavior off-screen, Hollywood kept calling. Talent agents, directors, producers, they all saw something in Charlie. He had natural charisma, a cinematic presence, and just enough wildness to feel real on screen. But that wildness wasn't just a persona. It was growing, and it was about to meet a moment that would change his career and his life forever. In 1986, Charlie Sheen became a star. Platoon wasn't just another war movie. It was gritty, raw, and personal, based on director Oliver Stone's real experience in Vietnam. And Charlie? He was front and center. At 20 years old, he played Chris Taylor, a fresh-faced soldier thrown into the horrors of war. The film was a box office smash and won Best Picture at the Oscars. Charlie didn't just hold his own among acting legends like Willem Dafoe and Tom Berenger. He outshined them. Critics called his performance haunting, relatable, soulful. Hollywood had found its next big thing. What made Platoon so eerie, though, was its parallel to Charlie's own life. His father's defining role had been in Apocalypse Now, another Vietnam epic, where Martin nearly lost his life during production. For Martin, the film triggered a personal collapse and a rebirth. For Charlie, it lit a fuse. That same year, he teamed up again with Oliver Stone for Wall Street, playing opposite Michael Douglas. The film became an instant cultural touchstone. Greed was good, and Charlie was golden. But while his character, Bud Fox, wrestled with morality and excess, Charlie had already made his choice. "I watch those scenes now," Charlie later said, "and I can tell when I was drunk. That scene, hammered, that one, even worse." Despite his performance, his offset behavior was becoming harder to ignore. Stone would later cast Tom Cruise in Born on the 4th of July, passing Charlie over entirely, a move that many believe altered the course of his career forever. Still, roles kept coming. Young Guns, 8 Men Out, Major League, Hot Shots. Charlie was everywhere. He could do drama, comedy, action, all with that trademark smirk and effortless swagger. He wasn't just a movie star. He was becoming a legend. But Hollywood started whispering. He wasn't reliable. He partied too hard. He didn't show up to rehearsals. By the early 90s, Charlie had developed a reputation, not just as a talented actor, but as a liability. While his peers, Tom Cruise, Johnny Depp, Rob Lowe, polished their brands, Charlie leaned into the chaos. He saw himself as different. "I was so jealous of those guys," he admitted later. "They got all the girl, all the perks, all the press. I told myself I'm going to eclipse all of them." And in a way, he did. Not through sustained success or critical acclaim, but through sheer infamy, through notoriety, through chaos. And yet, no one knew just how far Charlie Sheen was willing to go. By the early 1990s, Charlie Sheen wasn't just a working actor, he was a celebrity, but not for the reasons Hollywood usually celebrates. His roles kept landing, but the headlines were catching up fast. The first major scandal came in 1990 when his then-fiancée, actress Kelly Preston, was injured in a bizarre firearm incident. Rumors swirled that Charlie had pulled the trigger, but both denied it. The real story? A small revolver he carried allegedly fell out of his jeans pocket, hit the bathroom floor, and discharged. The bullet hit the toilet and sent ceramic shrapnel flying. One piece struck Kelly. It was an accident, yes, but it set a precedent. Charlie Sheen wasn't just unlucky, he was reckless. And more importantly, people were starting to pay attention to the destruction. From 1991 to 1994, his name kept appearing in gossip columns, not for box office wins, but for lavish parties, run-ins with law enforcement, and his growing association with Hollywood's underground. The most damning blow came during the Heidi Fleiss trial, where it was revealed that Charlie had spent over $50,000 on escort services in a single year. He paid by check, no less, making him one of the few traceable clients. Fleiss later claimed it was much more, possibly closer to $400,000, but Charlie didn't deny it. In fact, he testified in court. "Yes, I paid for companionship," he admitted, "because I didn't have time for dating." The damage to his image was immediate, but not fatal, and that became a recurring theme for Sheen, getting caught, taking the hit, and walking away relatively unscathed. But privately, the toll was building. In 1996, Charlie was arrested and charged with battery after allegedly slamming his then-girlfriend, Brittany Ashland, onto a marble floor, causing injuries that required stitches. According to court documents, he also threatened to harm her if she spoke out. He pleaded no contest and received probation, along with a 1-year suspended prison sentence. But his behavior didn't change. Just 2 years later, in 1998, his father, Martin Sheen, made a desperate call. called to paramedics after Charlie overdosed at home. Reports initially stated it was a stroke, but it was soon confirmed to be a cautionary overdose after Charlie attempted to inject the drug with a syringe. He was hospitalized, survived, and ordered to attend rehab. His probation was extended. For a moment, it looked like rock bottom, but if there's one thing Charlie Sheen always knew how to do, it was rebound. Within 2 years, he was back on TV. He had landed a role in the sitcom Spin City, stepping in to replace Michael J. Fox, who had left due to health complications. And to everyone's surprise, Charlie crushed it. He brought charm, timing, and presence to the role, and even won a Golden Globe in 2002. The comeback was real, but the foundation was cracked, and the storm was far from over. When 2.5 Men debuted in 2003, no one could have predicted just how massive it would become, or how deeply it would blur the line between Charlie Sheen, the actor, and Charlie Sheen, the persona. The show was simple. Charlie Harper, played by Charlie Sheen, is a wealthy, womanizing bachelor who writes jingles and lives a carefree Malibu lifestyle. His uptight brother, Alan, John Cryer, and Alan's young son, Jake, move in after a messy divorce. Hijinks ensue. What set the show apart wasn't the concept, it was Sheen. The role felt like it had been written for him, because, in many ways, it had. Behind the scenes, Chuck Lorre, the show's creator, admitted that he wrote the character as a fictionalized version of Charlie himself. The drinking, the partying, the endless parade of women, it wasn't fiction. It was method acting by default. Charlie didn't have to pretend. He was Charlie Harper. Audiences loved it. The show quickly rose in the ratings, dominating Monday nights and making Sheen a household name for a new generation. By season 4, he was earning $800,000 per episode. By season 8, that number had jumped to $1.8 million, making him the highest-paid actor on television. But while the show thrived, Charlie's life began to unravel again. In 2004, his marriage to actress Denise Richards began to collapse. She filed for divorce while pregnant with their second daughter, citing behavior she described as dangerous and disturbing. Denise later alleged that Charlie had an attraction to questionable online material involving younger individuals, claims Charlie denied, though he acknowledged FBI involvement to clear the air. Then came Brooke Mueller. The two married in 2008, had twin boys in 2009, and on Christmas Day that same year, Charlie was arrested for allegedly holding a knife to her throat. A protection order followed. Charlie pleaded guilty to misdemeanor assault and agreed to attend rehab instead of serving time. Despite the chaos, he returned to 2.5 Men like clockwork. His comedic timing was still sharp, his performances still magnetic, but on set, the cracks were visible. He was showing up late, forgetting lines, missing marks. His private life was spilling into the studio. By 2010, the show was the biggest sitcom on TV, and Charlie Sheen was its unstable anchor. The entire machine depended on him, and he was starting to fall apart. Then came January 2011. Charlie was rushed to the hospital after a 36-hour party with escorts and reported substance use. Officially, it was labeled a hernia. Unofficially, it was another overdose. The media exploded. Paparazzi swarmed. CBS hit the brakes. The show was put on indefinite hiatus, and Charlie Sheen, the face of the most successful comedy on television, was about to burn it all down. It's one of the most infamous celebrity interviews of all time. February 2011. ABC News sits down with Charlie Sheen. He's shirtless, gaunt, wide-eyed, and speaking in riddles. But it's not just what he says, it's how he says it. "I'm not bipolar," he declares. "I'm bi-winning. I win here and I win there. Now what?" He describes himself as a Vatican assassin warlock with tiger blood and Adonis DNA. He claims to have a different constitution that allows him to survive what would kill other people. And perhaps most iconically, when asked about drug use, he replies, "Yeah, I am on a drug. It's called Charlie Sheen. It's not available because if you try it once, you will die. Your face will melt off and your children will weep over your exploded body." The internet exploded. The clips went viral. Twitter lit up. Overnight, Charlie Sheen became the first person to hit 1 million followers in under 24 hours. What should have been a cautionary tale turned into a meme fest. T-shirts, parody, costume. Winning was no longer just a catchphrase. It was a brand. But behind the scenes, things were unraveling fast. CBS and Warner Brothers were watching carefully. Production on 2.5 Men had already been halted. Now, they were facing a liability. Charlie was attacking the show's creator, Chuck Lorre, in interviews, even referring to him by his Hebrew name in a way that many saw as anti-Semitic. On March 7, 2011, Warner Brothers officially fired Charlie Sheen. He responded by filing a $100 million lawsuit claiming wrongful termination. He launched a live tour, My Violent Torpedo of Truth, which debuted to boos and walkouts. Audiences expected jokes, jokes, they got incoherent rants. Charlie Sheen was no longer the highest-paid actor on television. He was a man spiraling in public, and no one could look away. In hindsight, many believed the interview wasn't just performance art, it was a manic episode. Years later, Charlie would be diagnosed with bipolar disorder. At the time, though, the world wasn't laughing with him. It was laughing at him. And yet, in the middle of the collapse, Charlie did something unexpected. He survived. After his firing from 2.5 Men, Charlie Sheen became a man without a stage. He'd sued Warner Brothers for $100 million. He'd declared war on Chuck Lorre. He'd gone viral in ways no actor had before. But none of it brought stability, only silence. Once the most watched man on TV, Charlie was now a tabloid fixture, a spectacle spiraling without control. And behind the scenes, his personal life was collapsing just as fast. On March 1st, 2011, Charlie created a Twitter account. Within 25 hours, he had over 1 million followers, a Guinness World Record. The timing was perfect. He was trending globally, but what looked like a comeback was actually a smokescreen. Just one day later, his ex-wife Brooke Mueller filed a restraining order against him. She claimed Charlie had threatened to cut off her head, put it in a box, and mail it to her mother. The court granted the order. Charlie lost custody of their twin sons. The headlines were brutal, but the facts were worse. Over the next several months, Charlie became increasingly erratic. He toured the country with his Torpedo of Truth show, selling out venues based on meme fame, but every night ended the same way: confusion, walkouts, and disappointment. He rambled about hookers, Hollywood conspiracies, tiger blood, and unnamed enemies. The audience didn't know whether to laugh or leave. Many chose the latter. At one stop, fans shouted, "Smoke crack on stage!" Others demanded stories about drugs and escapades. Charlie promised intermissions that never ended. In Detroit, the crowd revolted, booing, chanting, walking out. "Where are the cops?" one man yelled. "I've just been robbed by Charlie Sheen." This wasn't rock bottom. This was beneath it. Hollywood closed its doors. Directors stopped calling. Sponsors vanished. His interviews dried up. The world moved on. Even his former show replaced him. In September 2011, Ashton Kutcher debuted on 2.5 Men as Charlie Harper's replacement. In a cruel twist, Charlie's character was killed off-screen, hit by a train. At the end of the series finale years later, a piano falls from the sky and crushes a look-alike of Charlie. The camera then pans to Chuck Lorre himself, smirking at the screen before a second piano lands on him too. Symbolic or petty, either way, the message was clear. No one truly won. And in the middle of all this chaos, Charlie Sheen, the man, not the meme, was alone. His star had burned too hot, too fast. And now there was nothing left but ashes. In November 2015, Charlie Sheen sat down for another interview. But this time, it wasn't about a sitcom or a meltdown or tiger blood. It was about his health. "I'm here to admit that I am, in fact, HIV positive," he told Matt Lauer on NBC's Today Show. It wasn't just a confession, it was a revelation. For 4 years, Charlie had kept the diagnosis a secret. Not from partners, he claimed, but from the public. And for good reason. He had spent millions, up to $10 million by his count, on hush money to keep people quiet. Blackmailers, alleged former partners, business associates. Some had threatened to release tapes. Others simply wanted cash. Charlie said enough was enough. "I'm not a victim," he insisted. "I'm a survivor." But the reaction was mixed. Supporters applauded his honesty. Critics questioned the timing. And former flames started speaking out. One of them was Brie Olson, known as one of Charlie's self-described goddesses, during his 2011 spiral. She claimed Charlie never told her about his diagnosis, despite their year-long relationship and regular unprotected intimacy. "He never said a word," Brie told the press. "I learned about it with everyone else." Charlie denied this. Another ex-girlfriend, Natalie Kenley, backed him up. "Charlie isn't a monster," she said. "I believe he told everyone who needed to know. I believe he acted responsibly." But speculation spread. Was Charlie hiding more? Could there be legal consequences? Publicly, he denied wrongdoing. Privately, he was navigating one of the most painful chapters of his life, physically, emotionally, and financially. And yet, in an unexpected twist, his announcement had a ripple effect. Google searches for HIV symptoms, HIV testing, and HIV prevention spiked overnight. At-home HIV testing sales jumped by 95%. Clinics reported an increase in people seeking information. What began as a confession became a public health moment. Charlie Sheen, the meme, had done more for HIV awareness in one day than most campaigns could in a year. There was something poetic in that the most volatile man in Hollywood had turned his darkest truth into something life-saving for others. But even with his diagnosis out in the open, Charlie's troubles weren't over. In the years following, more allegations would emerge. Legal issues would reappear. And And one final, disturbing accusation would cast a permanent shadow over his legacy. As the headlines faded and the public moved on, Charlie Sheen entered the rarest chapter of any Hollywood tragedy: survival. Since 2018, Charlie has kept a low profile. He's been sober, for real this time, and committed to staying that way. The decision, he says, wasn't prompted by rehab or courts, but by something far more personal. One morning, after a night of drinking, Charlie forgot he had to take his daughter to an appointment. He couldn't drive. Hungover, embarrassed, he called a friend to take her. And in that moment, he realized what he had become. Not the warlock, not the wild man, but the father who couldn't be there. That morning was the wake-up call. Since then, he's sworn off alcohol completely. Drugs had already been out of the picture for years, but now, so was the persona. No more tiger blood, no more winning, just Charlie. He made peace with Chuck Lorre, the man he once publicly attacked. In 2023, Chuck offered Charlie a role in his new show, Bookie. They met again at a table, read, hugged, and started fresh. Chuck later said, "It was healing. It reminded me we were friends once." Charlie has also mended relationships with his ex-wives. Denise Richards, once his harshest critic, now invites him to family dinners. Brooke Mueller, his ex-wife and the mother of his twins, lives just down the street. They speak every day. The Sheen family, a fractured, chaotic group for decades, has found something close to peace. Charlie hasn't taken a major acting role since 2017. Maybe he doesn't want to, or maybe he knows that re-entering that world could reignite the demons he worked so hard to bury. Either way, he seems content to step away from the spotlight, to let the myth die and the man finally live. Looking back, his legacy is complicated. He wasn't the most celebrated actor of his generation. He didn't win Oscars or transform cinema, but he did something few others ever could. He became unforgettable. For better or worse, there will never be another Charlie Sheen, and maybe that's the point.